We recently sailed Royal Caribbean's Anthem of the Seas to Alaska. Come along with us to see the cruise ports we visited and the things we did.
The name Skagway means place where the north wind blows. I also think it's the east, the west, the south wind. We got to do an excursion called the Best of Skagway. Well, the Best of Skagway, and we spent 3 minutes in Canada. Skagway actually came about during the gold rush of 1898. It was actually a few years before that. A man with the last name of Moore settled Skagway, but he called it Mooresville. I don't know why the name Mooresville didn't stick, but I do know that it eventually was named after a Tlingit word, which meant land of the north winds. This is Becky. She was our tour guide. Skagway was just the first stopping point for those on the way to the Yukon in search of gold. Each traveler had to carry 2,000 pounds of goods, and they only had their backs to carry. Chilkoot Pass is what they were using, but Moore was hired to find a better path over to the Yukon. He did eventually succeed in creating a better path, but it was still pretty treacherous. In fact, only about 20% of travelers made it to their final destination. Years later, they created what is now called the White Pass Railway. The White Pass Railway was in use until like 1980. It's a narrow gauge train system, and I have no idea how they built this rail up here. I was not expecting to get rained on inside the tunnel. Author Jack London actually penned this the Dead Horse Pass for, well, obvious reasons. Also the stretch land that inspired the Call of the Wild. At the end of the ride, we went to Liarsville. In the gold rush, a bunch of reporters came to report on the story. None of them actually wanted to go on the treacherous journey, so they just stayed here and they made up whatever they want, hence the term Liarsville. Their motto was never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Tour then took us to the Red Onion Saloon. The Red Onion is a remaining house of ill repute in Skagway. The Red Onion actually enticed women to come and work for them by telling them that each of them could decorate their own room however they wished. Things like they could choose their own wallpaper. When renovating, they pulled back 18 layers of wallpaper. Their estimation is about 180 women worked through the Red Onion in 2 years. When Skagway was settled, most of the people could not read or write, so the church buildings were color-coded. The Catholics were green, the Pentecostals were red, and the Mormons, they were brown. And finally, we learned the story of the most famous con man, Soapy. It's a cool story. Let me know if you want a more detailed video on that. We then braved all of those north winds and walked back to our ship. It sits in the same harbor where they came in all those years ago. So I'm a teacher on summer break and I teach things. So what should we learn about next? Soapy Smith, and he is king of the con men in Skagway, Alaska, or at least he was. He was dethroned, but not before he did a lot of things. This is Jefferson Smith, known as Soapy, and he got the name because he decided to start a couple of enterprises in Skagway, all of which were not reputable. In Skagway around 1897, he was selling soap bars. The soap bars were approximately $1 a piece, which was a lot of money then. But what he did is he would say, you buy my soap bars and you have a chance to win some money. With each soap bar he had wrapped in $1, $5, $10, $100, right? He would sell 2 soap bars to 2 people in the audience. They would get it, they would unwrap it, they would see that they won money, and now suddenly everybody's like, yeah, I'll buy your soap. That seems like a good deal. Problem was, those 2 guys worked for Soapy and nobody else ever won money. Soapy also had a telegraph office, which is really interesting because telegraph lines did not make it to Skagway until approximately 1901. Take money from people and say, I will send your messages back home to the lower 48, and he would wire their messages. The problem is his telegraph wire went out the back door of his office and into the river about 45 feet away. He had a tendency to say that he would wire money home to their families, but he would just, of course, keep the money. Eventually, the town people got really fed up with him, and he obviously was put out for arrest. And a mob formed, and they were going to go and take down Soapy. A man by the name of Frank Reed was kind of leading the charge, and it's unclear who shot first, but Soapy and Frank Reed had a little bit of a consternation between the 2 of them, and it's generally believed that Soapy actually went first, and then Frank died about a week later. This is Frank's monument that is erected to him. The townspeople hailed him a hero, and he got a hero's burial. And while originally Soapy had a very nondescript grave, they did eventually give him a wooden plaque that has his name and death date on it. Longer form video about my trip to Skagway, Alaska on YouTube if you want to go watch that, but that's the story of the most famous con man in Skagway. What else do you guys want to know? I'm a teacher on summer break. I've got nothing to do.
That is a 16-year-old whale named Kelp. How do I know? Well, because I am in Juneau, Alaska, and my tour guide told me so. She has no reason to lie to me. I am a teacher on summer break, and I teach things. And since my classroom is currently a cruise ship, let's talk about Juneau, Alaska. But first, triangle potatoes. If you know, you know. First, I want to acknowledge that not everybody can travel this way, but if you have the opportunity to go on a cruise, I highly recommend And just, this is not sponsored. Royal Caribbean has no idea who I am. I would like to put myself out there one more time, asking if they need a guest lecturer on board. I mean, not like a permanent gig, but maybe 1 or 2 sailings.
You can only access Juneau by air
or by sea. This is my parents' first cruise, and say hello to TikTok's favorite dad. We booked our excursion through Alaska Coach Tours, and our tour guide was Allie Rose. And I know you really can't see it, but that is a bald eagle's nest. I'm going to zoom in right there. Our first stop is the Mendenhall Glacier and Nugget Falls. The Mendenhall Glacier is part of the Juneau ice fields, and it forms Mendenhall Lake. There's a hike at the base of the visitor center that you can go on that will take you out to Nugget Falls. Keep your eyes peeled for various wildlife, like this bald eagle. And I swear to you, up in that tree, that is a porcupine. The hike out to Nugget Falls itself is about a mile one way, but hike is kind of a misnomer because it's more of a glorified This walk. Is Nugget Falls, 377 feet tall, formed by the Nugget Glacier. All of that water eventually flows into the inside pass. The next part of our tour was probably my favorite. The falls were pretty, but this was cool. We went with Allen Marine Tours on a whale watching excursion. Us and about 150 of our closest friends boarded the St. John. It was rainy and cloudy, but our wildlife expert Riley was so informative and so helpful to help us understand what we were looking. And the St. John had this outside viewing platform that you could go to. It was cold, it was windy, it was raining. The Arizona girl does not do cold very well. I am so glad we braved it because that is a whale spout. Whales come up to the surface to take a few breaths before they do deep dives to find food. If you're whale watching and you see that spout, watch carefully because you might be able to see a fluke like this. And these whales tend to migrate 6,000 miles round trip and come back to this place year after year. From the markings on that tail, we know this is kelp. He's 16 years old. And according to our tour guide, he's kind of a show-off. I think kelp needs social media. What do you guys think? And the sea lions apparently usually fight for spots on that buoy, but today they were sleeping. Boat tour was about 2 hours long, and there were complimentary snacks and beverages. Was it cold? Yes. Was it absolutely worth it? Yes. I'm a teacher. I teach things. What else do you want to know?
This is the rare Canadian whirling weirdo. Or is that an American weirdo in Canada? That's probably, or at least I was. This was a few days ago. Welcome to the beautiful port of Victoria, British Columbia. This was the last stop on our Alaska cruise itinerary, and yes, we were greeted by... We booked this amazing rickshaw tour, which I thought was going to be pulled by bikes, but that's Dee and that's Jay. Yeah, they were actually running these things up. In addition to their amazing athletic skills, we actually got to learn a lot about the city. For instance, these houses were bought from the Sears catalog in the early 1900s. In fact, they told us about all the historic homes. If they have an oval plaque like that one right there, they are original to the And they also told us that if a house had a lot of spindles, that meant the family was rich. Really rich. Carving spindles cost a lot. And a shout out to mom and dad. Everybody say hi. And of course, I was really excited to go to the Emily Carr house. She was a famous author and artist that lived on the island. Now, if you're ever visiting Victoria, British Columbia, you can choose to go to the Bouchard Gardens, or you can go to this park that was designed by the same people that designed those gardens. Bouchard's about an hour away from port. This was about 15 minutes. This is Beacon Hill Park, and the same people also designed Central Park in New York. This Arizona girl has not seen this much green in such a long time. Can't see it very well, but up in those trees there are birds. And this is called the Moss Lady, but being from Utah, it looked like Mount Timpanogos to me. What do you guys think? They also had a sundial, which was fairly accurate. It was off by an hour. I think nobody told it about daylight savings time. Across from the dial, there is this tree, and just look very carefully. Do you see that person up there? Yeah, he was taking this picture of us. In fact, he was quite adventurous. I actually dared him to run through the sprinklers with me. I don't think he thought I would actually do it. He'd say he's never had anyone quite like me on one of his tours. I was determined to experience literally everything. Not have touched this tree though, because you see I'm using my sweater because those leaves are super sharp. We went and toured downtown Victoria and found a lot of stuff with my mother-in-law's name on it. And then we went downtown and we got to see everything downtown, including the Parliament building, which was built apparently by a con man. And then the Empress Hotel, which is the most famous hotel on the island, was a result of plagiarism. Also started sinking. Let me know if you want to know more about who am I kidding. Yes, there'll be a longer video on it. Got packed to port just in time to see Celebrity Edge pulling. But all too soon it was time to say, have you ever been to Victoria? What did you do there? Let me know.
Thanks for joining us for today's video. My name is Tamara Hancock. I make curiosity content about things that I am curious about, and I share them with you. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, or this is a video that YouTube thinks that you will enjoy. We'll see you on the next one.